Andrew, as you know, I wanted you to start by giving us a little bit of a window on your childhood and your parents' cultural background, because we all are planted in a garden. Well, we are a garden when we're young, and we didn't plant it. And we're starting with stuff that may or may not be good for us. So this is why we start with the childhood, and then we look at where we have taken ourselves since. So thank you, Andrew.
Yeah.
Over to you.
Well, I'd probably have to say in reflection that my childhood and my experience of Christianity was a little bit empty. But before that, my father and my grandfather were all Chinese, and they were a little bit peculiar because they were Christians in China. So that was the starting point, and our family were patrons of the local Anglican church. But I must say I went to Sunday school, and I just enjoyed meeting all the kids and playing and getting dressed up and all that sort of stuff. And I'd have to say at that time, I just got one real memory that I think of fondly was one time my parents were away, and this is during Christmas, and I got this most amazing car racing set. And I got up the next morning and it wouldn't work. And I just thought, oh my God, the batteries wouldn't work and all that sort of stuff. So that night I prayed to Jesus and God, and I prayed so hard. And the next day nothing happened. And so then after that I said, okay, that didn't work. Maybe I'll stick to my original plan, which was to become a doctor and a martial artist, and I'll just work hard at everything I do. So I'd have to say, but after that, I think that emptiness and that diligence and the desire to train and work hard at things sort of was part of the fabrication that eventually took me to, as I mentioned to you before, was to be reintroduced to Christianity through quite an alternative route, and that was when I went back after I did emergency medicine to study, arts and literature and do my master's on William Blake. And it was here where I found, oh my God, this is where I find Christianity reborn again as something new. I felt, the books like Marriage of Heaven and Hell, where Jesus is portrayed as someone who marries all the desires in the body, from sexual to mystical to healing to prophecy, all those hidden desires. There's no desire that doesn't get accepted, and it's all married together, and that Jesus is someone who can put all those desires, all those fragments together again. And so part of me felt like this emptiness found an intellectual way or a poetic way, a fun way with lots of pictures, a way to find my path again. And obviously that was mixed with a lot of martial art training, mixed with Taoism and Qi and all that sort of stuff. So that was my return.
I want to stay with that kind of quietly for a minute. For all of us, the idea that Jesus, and I notice Blake doesn't say Christ, I'm just going by your book. He says Jesus, which is very embodied for me, whereas Christ is a bit disembodied. But Jesus is, well, would you say, a doorway to an integrated life, the physical and the spiritual in harmony.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful, good news, that.
Yeah. The one that I did my master's on was the sort of like the four Zoas. And so you had your bodily urges, sexuality, the fire, the passion, the poetic side. That sort of grumbles along. You have your heart and love and all that sort of stuff. And then you had Earthona, which was the earth. He called them all these names, Tamas, Luva for love. He had Earthona, which is earth owner. So that was the real spiritual foundation. And then we had Urizen. And he said, all these different characters, they're never ever going to get along. Sex wants to do what he wants to do. The heart wants to do what it wants to do. The spirit, and then we had, we had all these parts, and they would Judaism always wanted to be in charge because we're taught at school that intellect is the be-all and end-all. And if you know all your scriptures, if you know all the answers to everything, you're in charge. So therefore, the intellect should be in charge. But eventually, things don't go right and you develop something wrong in life, or things, marriage falls apart, or things don't go right at work, or you have a hazard. But somehow there is a way to reconcile all opposites, all things in the body, and that was for him, that was the self-sacrifice to the Christ or the Jesus-like character who had unlimited imagination. And so everything, I felt, oh my God, that fits in with me. And it fit in with my Taoist and martial art training.
Do you, there's so many questions arise for us and it's really fruitful. What do I want to ask? If we read the Gospels and we see how Jesus is, his being, and what he's saying and teaching, and then how he ends, how his life ends, one of the themes of all of that is relinquishment. Now, on the other hand, I've said to us this morning that after years of staying with this stuff, I feel there's a lot in the Bible that's also about individual affirmation. You are valuable in yourself. Your way is important. Is it difficult to reconcile the idea of relinquishment with the affirmation of one's self, a self-affirmation?
Yeah, I suppose there's a self of, if you trust all the different parts of you, there's nothing that you need to throw out. There's nothing part of you that's bad. You're your unique self. So if you throw that all into the melting pot and you come up with your individual you, then you will open the doorway to the kingdom, to heaven, and in that space you will then do all the things that, as Christians, that for all the traditions, you serve the people, you want to heal the people, you want to do the right things, you behave properly. All those things become manifest effortlessly, as opposed to, the 2,000 rules that I have to follow in my life, and you just go crazy. I just cannot do this. Jesus was spontaneous and acted from virtue, and so should each of us. If we find that heavenly space, that energy where we're in line with heaven and earth and ourselves, then it all becomes spontaneous, effortless, I hope.
Well, I don't know. We'll have to come back to that. Where that relinquishment is an effortless thing, it's also a lifetime struggle to let go.
Sure.
But now, because of your tradition and because we're here together, can we touch briefly on Taoism, where this arises, who are the exponents, what books are accessible to us Western-minded people to get, and it's somehow it's crossover with a Christian view.
Yeah.
Just to put this on the table, because we can't spend too long on that, but
Sure.
Let's go into that.
Right, so it's probably a little bit of an opposite to Christianity, because they like to have no rules, no laws, no dogma. This is a path where if you go into silence, into meditation, then all the answers appear inside you, right? But you do have people that try to teach the ineffable. So you've got people like Lao Tzu, Chuang Tzu, you've got a whole series of masters along the way. We have the eight immortals and all that stuff, that people that have done similar things to Jesus in the Chinese tradition. So I'd have to say that it is not necessarily a tradition that's full of words. It's a tradition that's full of trying to work towards spiritual experience or mystical experience. So in Taoism, it's very similar to reversing the creation myth in Christianity. So in the beginning was the one or the nothingness, and then there came light and day, and then the heaven and earth were formed. We have the same story in Taoism. So they say if you want to find that energetic space of where you will become yourself, well, then you go away from the 10,000 things. You then go to what they call the 8 forces. So that's the forces of nature. And then nature speaks to you. It doesn't speak to you in words, it speaks to you in chi, right? So you'll have different sensations for heaven, you'll have different sensations for earth, you'll have different sensations for the mountains, you'll have different sensations from the trees. And so we feel all these different types of chi, which then come into our body, and then that makes our organs. Fire for the heart, earth for the spleen, water for the kidneys, wood for the liver, metal or whatever for the lungs. So all these energies from nature come into you, and then they go into the final song, which is yin and yang, which is like light and dark. And when you bring light and dark together, you find the one or the nothingness, which is how we put all the fragments together like Blake did and like Christianity. When you get into that space, then you find that alignment between heaven and earth, and you become a sage or Christ-like in yourself. So there's this phenomenon of putting all the fragments together with the essential block, which is the experience of chi, which is a little bit different from Christianity. We don't necessarily get lost in words, though words are important. We get lost in spiritual or energetic experience. And so that's a big difference.
Well, how I relate to that, this is just one corner, and others may too. For some reason, Christianity became a very verbal, doctrinal outfit, totally distinct from the Jewish tradition, which is very practical. Okay, they're about obeying the commandments, but not necessarily in a legalistic or not life-giving way, but a life-affirming way. And in the heart of Judaism is this very pragmatic approach. I was writing just this week part of my narrative history and how I met in a meeting a missionary who had retired from India, and how he said, "What is a call?" And he never mentioned God. He said a call is seeing a challenge, one, and two, having the opportunity to do something about it. Now, putting that aside, let's pick up one aspect here, mystical. We don't have much background, I don't think, in Christianity of mysticism. But without being too esoteric about it, I mean, what could you point to for us here today as part of the windows on our own mystical experience and our own mystical capacity? Where could some of us begin to think about what mystical means to us here?
Right. Well, maybe we should start with, there's a lot of words that get mixed up and everyone has their own term. What is God? I mean, you could say God is an experience of the one or the nothingness. You could say the Tao is the nothingness or the oneness. You could say Nirvana is the one or the nothingness. I mean, there's lots of words. So mysticism came out of philosophy to define that which is overwhelming to the person who's experiencing it, who gets an experience of everything yet nothing. And it totally overawes them and shocks them into change. So mysticism is usually that. It's an experience of the oneness that's in all of the person, right? But it's ineffable. Because we've gone from 10,000 things, we've lost all our words, we've lost all our emotions, we've lost all our sensations. It's just that thing, I am one dot of light, but I am everything. I am Jesus and I'm no longer me, but Jesus is also the other prophets in the other traditions. Everything is one.
Well, in my question, I'm asking for myself. The grand vision is there, and we can get some sense of it, but where is the little doorway? Now, you've just reminded me of an experience. I might check this out on behalf of others. I was about 19. I was the leader of a Crusader camp, a Scripture Union camp, with some young high school boys. And it got dark and we were going up a hill in the Marlborough Sounds and there was no path and we were crashing through a bit of undergrowth and one of the boys had glasses and they lost. Anyway, we got to the top of the ridge after about a 3-hour climb. And you know what? All I could do was sing hymns. I felt this big between the earth and the sky. Is that?
Well, I think, it's up to your bodily experience. And, if you ask me, emotions are important, but they can fool you. So you need to manage your emotions. We need to open up ourselves to energetic experience. And that's why I think, we've got a group here, that we meditate on the Thursdays at 1. In order to find those spiritual experiences, you have to start in the meditative path. And I have to say, for all my return to Christianity was based on my energetic spiritual experiences, experiences of, light thrashing through me so that my body dissolved. Times, I've talked to you about I go into a dark room once a year when you're just sitting there and the blinding light comes and you can't concentrate, and then you go back to your room and your whole body's full of light globes and you think, where are the lights? And you just feel humbled, And then after you meditate more, then you learn to leave your body and go and travel around in the kingdom, in heaven or eternity. And so to get out of words and trying to be a good boy or girl and do the right things and do practical things on the earth, why not experience the kingdom yourself? And that takes a little bit of practice. And maybe that's all those years when I was a kid, when I didn't get my batteries to get my racing car set me up for this. That it takes a little bit of practice. Meditation, working your emotions, dulling the mind, and putting the fragments together again. It's all doable. Everyone can do it.
Well, look, thank you very much, because that is a good segue. We have a few minutes in our service, but you've mentioned the special meeting of the meditative group here, and anyone sitting in church today to whom this is totally foreign and not particularly welcome, if they're willing to be a bit vulnerable and follow the sign of contradiction, maybe they'll turn out at the meditation group and say, look, I'm just coming once. Could they do that?
Yeah.
I'm just coming once today to see what this is like, and I may not come again. Then we have made a real move forward here. So thank you, Andrew. Now, can I say, will you welcome for up to an hour afterwards people coming up to you and interrogating you? Because please don't be backward in asking Andrew your questions. He's a big boy and he's tough and he's really interested in people. Thanks so much.
Yeah, you're welcome, Paul, and thank you for
That's been
asking.
good.